I remember my friend Teo was going to the fair with us. We were all traveling together, and I remember he came out. I don't know. I think I picked him up in LA and then brought him to Santa Paula and then to this house actually to pick up my mom, and then we all caravaned together back down to San Bernardino to the fair. He spent the day with us here, and I think this was the day that Adora and I plucked his eyebrows in Mom's living room. But as we were plucking his eyebrows in the living room and torturing him and grooming him, I remember my brother came out into the living room and started yelling at my mom, and then my stepdad grabbed my brother by the throat, broke the bedroom door, and this huge violent thing erupted in the bedroom, and they were screaming and yelling, and then my mom was just like, what the fuck? And what was interesting about that was my brother was dealing with meth addiction at the time. He had shown up over here and was like hiding behind the windows, the front windows of the house, and was convinced that people were following him and tracking him. And my mom was like, what do you have, a paparazzi? Like, what is going on? And he was crawling around the floors, freaking out. And so she let him stay in the guest room for a short period of time to detox because she didn't know what to do. And so that's why he was here, and he was staying here in the guest room. But he was really protective and weird and paranoid about his stuff. And I guess my mom she was looking for something in the room, and she had moved something, and that's what caused the commotion with my brother, and he was freaking out that she was going through his belongings. And so he came out, was yelling at her, and that's when Dave freaked out. But it was interesting because as my mom was trying to deal with that, what Dave didn't tell my mom was Dave was also doing meth and strung out on meth, and he had lost like 50 or 60 pounds in a very short period of time living here, and my mom thought he had cancer. So she had taken him to a bunch of doctors and professionals, to specialists, to find out whether or not he was dying, because he was just dropping weight and he had gotten really emaciated and he wasn't eating. She'd find him passed out, shit-faced on the garage floor in his own piss, and she didn't know what the hell was going on. And he never said anything, and he never clued her in, so she just stressed and worried about him for the longest time. And then it came out a couple years later, he kind of slipped up, and it came out that actually he had been doing meth with his coworkers because he worked for the city of LA. So it was just like, there was a lot of chaos that was going on in the house. And it was interesting because as my mom was dealing with my brother's drug addiction, she was dating someone with drug addiction, but totally clueless of what was going on. And they were almost mirroring each other, but no one seemed to notice how the dysfunction that was going on, which is really kind of sad in a lot of ways. But this house was definitely a really strange property. Donovan and I lived here for very, very briefly.
Oh, I have a funny story that involves Donovan. So Donovan was one of those kids that ran around town and found friends. He was probably, like 10 maybe?
No, he was 6.
He was 6? He was that young? Well, he was running around town making friends, and he found a little girl that he's brought home. He's like, oh, look, I brought home a friend. And next thing you know, it's, like 11 o'clock at night? And the fire trucks are coming around, the police station's coming around, there's all this commotion, and there's a missing girl in the neighborhood. And we went out there, and like they described the girl, and it happened to be the girl that Donovan brought home. She never told her parents where she was. They were 6 years old.
See, I don't remember that. I must have been at work, or Mom was babysitting or something. I wasn't even here. I was here. This is the place where Donovan had gone to school, and they had taught him about 911. If you dial 911, that's how you get a hold of the police. And so he wanted to test this theory, whether or not 911 actually really does work. And so he did so, but he didn't tell anybody because apparently he called it and they really answered, dispatch answered. So he hung up the phone and never said anything. And then the police came to our house and we didn't know what they were talking about. And so the police officer had to sit Donovan down and explain the seriousness of it, and only use that if it's an actual legit emergency. Let's move out of these people's way.